this video, I'll introduce you to Durston's new Agile line of rolling mills from my friends at ottofrei.com and teach you how to etch on mild steel to make your own texture plates to use in the mill. Hi, I'm Leslie Kale Villarreal, and I am excited to talk to you today about the new Durston Agile line of rolling mills. Today I have here a beautiful DRM F130. The F means flat, and this is their new Agile line. The Agile line is incredible for us jewelers because it can fit in our smaller studios, and it's not near as expensive as the traditional line of Durston mills, but you don't have to sacrifice any of the quality or performance of having a smaller, more affordable mill. You get it all, and it's really a great deal to get an Agile mill. Used to be that we had to buy other brands because the Durstons were so expensive. They were a bit out of the reach for the home hobbyist or the student or just the average jeweler. And now with the Durston Agile line, there's no reason why you shouldn't have one. So the biggest thing that I've noticed in the difference between the regular line of Durstons and the Agile, first of all, the price, of course. They're much less expensive and very competitively priced with any other mill on the market. But secondly, the main thing, and I'll just show you quickly, is now they have a T-bar here instead of a wheel. They used to have a big silver wheel at the top, or their other ones still do. And this one just has a T-bar, which in my opinion is quite handy because you can just grab it with one hand and whoop, whoop, there you go. You're set. It's a beautiful mill, and you're going to really like having one. Now, we use our rolling mills for a lot of different things as jewelers. Traditionally, we use it to thin out metal to roll sheet. Maybe you've got a piece of 18 gauge silver and you want to roll it into a 20 gauge silver sheet. So you can just take the stock that you already have and roll it down. Of course, you can roll out a silver coin or an ingot. And texture. That's the other thing that we use our mills for, is texture. We love to use patterns via paper or, botanical lace. There's so many different things you can use to texture in your mill. Today I'm going to be showing you how to use some texture plates and some paper cutouts that I made with a Silhouette Cameo. And you can really do a lot of fun stuff with your mill. Students always come to me and they say, well, I want to get a rolling mill. What should I get? And I said, well, how much money do you have and what are you going to do with it? And how much space do you have? Those are the three most important things. But the things to consider when you're getting a mill, of course, space is very important, and price. But even as equally as important is what you're going to do with it. If you primarily want to use your Durston mill for rolling out flat sheet or texturing or thinning your metal, then you may want to consider choosing a mill with all flat rollers. Durston offers the F110 flat rolling mill, which has a roll size of 110 millimeters and it weighs about 62 pounds. The Durston Agile F130 has a whopping 130 millimeters of flat space, which is quite generous, and it weighs about 88 pounds. Both the F10 and the F130 are great choices for the average jeweler who just needs to add texture to the metal or roll out large pieces of sheet. If you want to roll out wire with your mill, you might consider getting a combo roller, which has both flat space and grooves for rolling out wire. Durston offers the Agile C110 and the C130. An important consideration when choosing a combination mill is to pay attention to the amount of flat space that the roller has. You want to make sure you have adequate space for texturing your metal and rolling out your sheet. The C110 has 110 millimeters of roller space, of which 50 millimeters is dedicated to flat rolling for sheet and texturing your metal. The remaining roller space accommodates 4 sizes for half rounds and 9 sizes for full wire grooves. The machine weighs about 62 pounds. One of Durston's most popular mills is the Durston Agile C130 combo. This mill has 130 millimeters of roller space. It's divided as follows. 60 millimeters of flat space can be used for texturing and rolling sheet. 30 millimeters is devoted to half rounds in 5 sizes, and 50 millimeters is devoted to 11 sizes of full wire grooves. The machine weighs about 87 pounds and has a gear ratio of 5:1. So taking all those things into consideration, you can choose the best mill for you, and you can contact your friends at Otto and they will help you also. So, it just depends on what your needs are. So I'm going to show you the Agile DRM F130 as I mentioned. So the big
Great feature of the 130 size mills
is that you have a 5-to-1 gear ratio. Now, if you've ever owned a different mill and you find it's quite hard to turn and crank the handle when you're rolling out your ingots or you're rolling out your metal, that's probably because you have a 4-to-1 turning ratio. This one has a 5-to-1. And what that means is 5 turns of this equals 1 complete turn of your roller. And that gives you a lot more force to get it through. It's a lot easier to turn. It really makes a huge difference.
Smaller mill will be fine with a 4-to-1 gear ratio.
So I'm going to show you today how to use this mill, for some basic texturing, and I'll stick an ingot in here and show you how to roll that out. And I also would just like to show you the cabinet. I have mine mounted on a cabinet. Now, you don't have to mount yours on a cabinet. You can mount it right on your bench top.
This one weighs about 88 pounds.
So it's a heavy mill, okay? But it's solid as a rock. And what's nice about having it on a stand is you can get all the way around it. And sometimes if you have it mounted on top of your bench, you can't. So, and if you can't mount it to your floor because you have a nice studio floor, or it's concrete or something, you don't want to drill through it, you can mount the stand to some pieces of wood, and that will allow you to even scoot it around if you need to, and it will still keep it stable for when you're rolling out your metal. Okay, I'm just going to show you this stand that I have here, and I'll give you an item number in case you want to get it. This is my stand. You can see here I have it on a wooden platform, and it's bolted down to that. And what's really great about this cabinet too is you get all this wonderful extra storage space. So I can put all my dies and any other heavy things that I have in there, and it will just make it more secure and more sturdy. So you have this nice cabinet, and also if I need to scoot it around, I can do that. Let me just back up and show you a bit. So if I want to scoot this around, if I need to move it a little bit, it's not quite so hard to do. And it's still plenty secure, okay? So I don't have to worry about it tipping or falling over.
Some mills allow you to independently set the right or left side adjusters. However, the Durston has parallel flatness preset at the factory, which is great for precision rolling and thickness when you're making sheet and you need accurate measurements. However, if for some reason you did want to mess with those, you could remove the 4 screws and hold down the plastic cover to access the gears, and then remove the handle and circlip, and you can do that. If you ever do think your mill is in parallel, that would be how you would do it. You would remove the cover and move the adjusters independently while checking the alignment of the rolls. The inner numbers are metric and the outer numbers are in inches. They're there so you can make precision-sized materials. To open your rollers, you turn the handle clockwise, just like a clock. And to loosen your rollers, you will turn it counterclockwise.
It makes perfect sense, and it's easy to remember. So when you put in your metal and you get it to where you want it and you want to tighten it a little bit more, you'll turn it clockwise. And when you want to take it out or loosen it up, you go counterclockwise. Have you ever had a piece of metal going into your mill? Or if you've ever, I know I have, I would like to know how many of you have, and you're trying to crank that sucker out, and you've got a little bit too much tension on it, and it's so incredibly hard to turn that you think you're going to have to stand on the arm to get it to go with all of your body weight, and you call 5 other people over to help you turn that arm. Well, that's happened to me several times with other mills, but with this mill, I find I can just back it right out, and it doesn't go in there and then jam and get stuck. It's easy to just bring it backwards if I need to, and lower the tension. That's a big deal, especially for some of us weak girls. We're trying to roll some pretty heavy stuff. So that's just that's because of the gear ratio and the way that it's made, and it has the reduction gear on the side, and it's really, really easy to use. So we're going to do some rolling out of texture plates and other things, and I'll show you a little bit of that, and we'll go get started on that right now.
Before you begin to use your Durston for the first time, you'll want to remove the protective coating that's on the rollers. To do this, just use some mineral spirits that you can get from your local hardware store in a soft cloth, and gently rub the rollers until they're perfectly clean. You always want to keep your rollers very clean, and when they're not in use, you want to put a little light coat of oil over them. I like to use 3-in-1 oil on mine. Always clean the oil off though before you begin to roll. The oil simply helps to protect your rollers from getting rust and corrosion. Now we'll discuss how to use your mill to reduce the thickness of your metal.
One of the most basic uses for your rolling mill is to simply roll out silver sheet from an ingot. Okay, you can either buy fine silver if you like to use fine silver. It's not suitable for rings and things, but you can use it for pendants and earrings. Anyway, and also for making a lot of embellishments. Fine silver is great to use in a shot plate or other things like that. So if you have an ingot and you want to roll this out, the best thing in the world to do is to use your rolling mill. Okay, so you can either melt your own, or like I said, you can buy these from your pawn shops or coin dealers. And these are non-minted, meaning it's not U.S. currency at all. It's not a quarter or half a dollar. It is actually just pure silver. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do one. Now I'm going to take the silver ingot and I'm going to always put in the same direction as I'm going through. So I'm going to keep it the one side. If you want to mark it with something, you can. Mine has some printing on this ingot, so it's easy for me to know which side is the top and the bottom. And I'm just going to adjust my mills, my roller, so it's nice and tight. And then I'm going to simply pass it through in the same direction a couple times. And each time I'm going to tighten my rollers up just a little bit more.
You'll have to make several passes when rolling out an ingot. You could be here for quite some time, so I won't show you the whole thing, but you get the idea. You just keep turning the handle clockwise to tighten up the wheel, and then putting your ingot through and keep rolling until you eventually get the desired thickness that you're looking for. It's the same technique for reducing any kind of metal sheet. You may need to stop and anneal if it gets too difficult to pass it through. You can use your calipers to measure the metal thickness until you get it to the desired gauge you're looking for. If you do need to stop and anneal, make sure that you pickle and clean and wipe down your metal or silver till it's completely free of residue. You never want to put anything dirty or contaminated onto your rollers. Also make sure that your piece is completely dry if you do rinse the pickle off, that there's no water or moisture left. You don't want to use anything wet in your rollers either. Now we'll discuss how to create texture on your metal with your rolling mill. I get the best results from paper by using 22 gauge metals or thinner. Something you can buy pre-cut is a laser printed cupcake wrapper from Amazon.com. They make really nice textures on your metal.
Paper. So this was printed out on a silhouette cameo on 65-pound cardstock, and it was used to make this piece. And
to roll this, I used a piece of foam and some 22 gauge copper, and I'll demonstrate that for you later in the video. These next images were also made with 65-pound cardstock using the silhouette cameo to create the designs. A Cricut machine or a silhouette cameo machine are basically like little paper cutters, and they cut out for you patterns and shapes to make your textures. You can use your own designs, or you can actually purchase designs within the program, or you can import your own from other softwares such as Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. This one was on 22 gauge silver.
Now we're going to roll some items here. So I have an annealed piece of copper that's been cleaned and pickled, and there's, it's been rinsed in water and it's clean, doesn't have any debris on it. That's very important. You always want to put clean metal into your mill. Then I'm going to show you a piece of textured paper that was printed with a silhouette cameo, or you could use a simple piece of watercolor paper or 65-pound cardstock, and you could use little punches to cut out a design. There's about 150,000 different things you could do, no exaggeration there, for items such as bone skeletal leaves that you can actually buy at Michael's craft store. You can use lace, you can use a million items, the cupcake wrappers that I talked about in other previous videos. There's a lot of different things that you can use in your mill, but I'm just going to run through and show you how they work. Now,
when you're using non-ferrous metals for jewelry, such as silver, brass, copper, gold, etc., you do not have to worry about scratching your rollers because the rollers are induction hardened to a 64 Rockwell.
Metal is much softer than they are, okay? If you've annealed it and it's clean and you don't have any debris on it. Okay, so you take your metal and your pattern, and to help push it through, I like to use a piece of cardstock. There's a lot of people that will tell you that you can use foam, and I'll show you that too. Foam does help. The only thing with foam you have to watch out for is, let me get a piece of foam here. This is a piece of foam, a really thin foam that I got from Amazon too. If you're going to use foam, it's going to make a texture on the back of your metal. So if you don't like that, then you may not want to use the foam. All right, so you can just use the foam, your silver or your copper or your gold, whatever you're going to be rolling, that's annealed, and then your pattern. You don't need anything on top because this is not going to hurt your mill, okay? So we'll take our sandwich, close our rollers till it's so tight that we cannot pull it out, okay?
And make a mental note of your settings. Mine's at a 5 on the top of the machine here on the dial.
So then you want to open your rollers by turning it counterclockwise and pull your piece back out.
I'm going to tighten my rollers back up to that setting I just had, and for me it was a 5. And once I get to my original mark, I'll go a little bit further and tighten it about 5 more points before I start to roll.
Sometimes I go a little over, but I usually try first at the five points here. Some people call that a quarter turn. I just, on this particular mill, I just call it 5.
Now I'm going to stick my sandwich back in, and I'm going to make sure that I got a nice tight roll there. And I'm going to start to turn the arm. And if it's real easy to turn, I don't feel a lot of tension, I might tighten that T-bar up just a little bit more to make a little bit more tension.
That'd be good. And then you want to roll it through and take it out. All right, and then peel off the paper and the foam, and what you'll end up with is a really pretty texture. And this one's nice and deep because I use 22 gauge. If I had tried this on 18 gauge, it wouldn't come out as deep. Even 20 gauge is a bit of a stretch, but paper and foam, you can get a really nice deep impression with the paper if you use 22 gauge or thinner. You can get a nice impression on 20 gauge, it just won't be very deep. Okay? So that little piece of foam helps, but you can also use cardstock on the back if you don't want to use the foam.
Now let's talk about using steel plates for texture. This is my all-time favorite method of putting texture on my work. I like to use steel plates that have been etched with designs for long-lasting patterns that can give you up to 100 rolls. It's much better than using brass or nickel silver for your texture plates because of the longevity of the use of the plate. The plates I'm showing you right here have designs etched on with either chemical or saltwater etch, depending on where you get your plate from.
Most of my students prefer the Durston, and one of the things that is a big selling feature of this is not just the quality, but the fact that the rollers open up really wide. And if you're going to use texture plates inside of your mill, you'll notice the texture plates come in different thicknesses. And if you've got one of the more economy style mills, you can't always get all of your plates through. So it says it's 6 millimeters, but actually I found it to be a little bit bigger than that. And if you open up your rollers, you don't want to open up past where the little inserts stop. So inside of your Durston, you'll see these little bars right here, and where your bottom of your roller, the side of it will hit that. You don't want to roll it up any farther than if that little bar starts to have a separation space in the bottom between the side of the machine and that space, then you've opened it up too far, and you could damage your mill by using things that are too thick. But that almost, I swear, that looks like it's about a 9 millimeter space in there. And you can use some pretty thick plates in there, though I think that they suggest you don't use anything over 6 mils in there.
Just a word of caution here, if you do exceed the 6 millimeter recommended maximum opening, you could break a gear. I don't know personally of anyone that this has happened to, but the manufacturer has suggested that you don't go over it. It could put excess stress on a gear tooth, and it could happen. So the warranty would not cover it in that situation. So the worst thing that could happen is you'd have to replace a gear. So I just want to let you know that Durston doesn't recommend it.
Okay, so I've got all kinds of texture plates, and I'm just going to show you these texture plates and show you why it's nice to have the Durston, because it fits all. Before I had my Durston, I could not use a lot of the ones that I would buy online because they were too thick, but you know, some of them had great prices because they were so thick, because you can only use them on a few mils. But anyway, so these are some of the texture plates, and I'll just show you them here. So
the plates that I have measure anywhere from 3 millimeters to 5.5. When you're purchasing a plate from someone you don't know, you might want to just double check to make sure it's made out of mild steel. Mild steel is the safest for your rolling mill, and it's really the type of steel you should be using. The patterns and designs that you can get out there are a lot of fun, but it's also fun to make your own, and I'll show you that later in the end of the video.
all right, this is one of the thickest plates I've bought. I really don't like plates this thick. It's just silly to make them this thick, but I know a lot of manufacturers from different countries, such as India, they don't know the difference and they make them too thick. So this one is like 5.25, I think. But it's a beautiful plate, and I could not use this plate on my other rolling mills that I've tried. But it does work on the Durston. This Durston can handle just about anything.
Now I'm going to roll this texture plate with a piece of annealed silver that's been pickled and cleaned through my mill.
So I'm going to take my silver, and once again we're just going to set our dial.
So open your rollers and feed your sandwich in
Until you can get it all the way in there, and then you tighten it up. It's nice and tight.
Take a note of the setting. Open it back up.
Pull it out and put it back to that setting and give it another quarter turn. And once the silver is in there and it's done, you take it out and you have your beautiful impression.
Here's a better close-up so you can see the plate and the texture.
Here's another commercially bought plate. And here is the 20 gauge piece of silver that I rolled.
So here's a plate that I etched on steel myself, and then I rolled a piece of 20 gauge copper on it.
I'm actually, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you how to make your own steel texture plates, so you don't have to be limited to other people's design. Because what happens when you're using, you buy them online or you buy them from another vendor, every other artist in the world can use the same patterns. And if you are creative and you have some design skills, or even you can buy vectors online and then use them to print to vinyl, and then make your own texture plate. This one's has a vinyl stickers on it, and I'm going to etch this one, and it's going to give me a nice texture plate, okay? So that's something else you can do.
Now I'm going to show you how to do some chemical etching on mild steel. Metal I'm using today I purchased from onlinemetals.com, and it's cold roll steel sheet ASTM A366/1008. They'll also cut it down to the size you need, but it's super important to get the cold rolled mild steel because it etches best with the chemicals I'm going to be showing you, and it's the safest for your rolling mill. To prepare my mild steel for etching, I sand the surface with 500 grit paper and then go down to a finer sanding sponge, which is just a 3M fine grit sanding sponge. And I just clean off the surface really good. You want to make sure you don't have any scratches or anything on your steel before you begin to apply your vinyl. Vinyl makes the best resist that I found for etching, chemical etching. I'm using Oracal 651 adhesive-backed vinyl that I got from Amazon.com. It lasts a really long time in the etch bath. Then I use some transfer tape. It's kind of a big roll of plastic tape that I got from Amazon. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a decal that I printed out on my Silhouette Cameo, And I'll make another video about using the Silhouette Cameo. But if you want to cut your vinyl stickers out with an X-Acto knife or whatever you want to do to make your own designs, you can do that. So since the adhesive on this vinyl is on the back of the design, I need to put it on transfer tape. So I'm going to peel it off of the transfer tape after I burnish it on really well. I'll cut this strip down. And I will burnish it so that it's going to pick up all the little pieces of decal that I have.
So the action with this is you just kind of got to burnish really well and then lift really slowly and just catch it. If something's not coming, you got to just go back and give it a nice good burnish and then lift up slowly, really slowly. Okay.
Then I burnish it onto my steel plate, and I want to make sure I get it centered and I have a little bit of overhang, and I make sure it's burnished down nice and securely. The next step is to use an X-Acto blade and just to cut along the side edges nice and sharp and remove the extra overhang. Then you want to carefully lift off your transfer tape, making sure that all the vinyl parts are sticking down onto your steel plate. Trim off any extra overhang edges and make sure everything is burnished down very tightly on the ends, and you'll be ready for your etch path.
Now I'd like to show you a greener way to etch on steel using no acid, just some table salt and copper sulfate. So let me just show you that process now. Some of the things you're going to need to do this. I just use a glass vase. You just need something that's going to be deep enough to control the water so it doesn't splash out. And I put a little pie tin underneath it. And I have a nice absorbent pad underneath to catch any spills. The next thing I recommend you have is a fish tank bubbler. Just get an El Cheapo one. You don't need anything that's too strong because you're not going to want the bubbles to be super strong. If the bubbles do get to be too much, you can simply crimp the hose a little bit and put a piece of tape on it, and it will help reduce the flow of the bubbles if it starts bubbling over. This, by agitating the water like this, it will give you a nice clean edge. Okay? Let's talk about the chemicals. Begin with a half a cup of table salt. And just like baking, you want to make sure you get exact measurements for all you ladies out there and guys. And then this is copper sulfate. And I'm just going to add a half a cup of that, so equal parts of each.
Here's the recipe for the salt and copper sulfate etch. If you want to make a smaller or larger batch, you'll have to just do some math calculations to figure out the ratios, as listed here. Please take a moment to review the environmental safety notice here.
Now I'm just going to put on some rubber gloves and a mask, and I'm going to stir it really well.
Make sure you wear a mask and eye protection. I'm wearing sunglasses today, but normally if I wasn't doing a video, I'd be wearing goggles. You want to protect your eyes from the dust of the solution that you're making. You want to stir the crystals together and mix them very well until they're well blended. I just used a wooden chopstick for this because it reached all the way down to the bottom. You don't want to use anything metal. Now I'm going to add 1 liter of water, which is equivalent to about 4.22 cups of water. You'll notice the solution turns a really pretty light blue. You want to stir it really well until all the sludge at the bottom is dissolved. Now I'm going to use the fish tank bubbler hose and put it down inside of the solution and secure it with some just scrap pieces of vinyl. The vinyl tape is really, really strong and it helps to hold things down. It also makes an excellent resist on the back of your piece. Make sure the bottom of the hose touches the floor of your container and then secure it down with the tape. Plug your aquarium bubbler into an electrical outlet and make sure that you get the water agitating. You can actually leave the water agitating for a little bit before you put in your metal. just to make sure everything is dissolved. Next, I'm going to secure a piece of the scrap vinyl onto the back of my piece and suspend it down into the solution. The reason you don't want to try floating or hanging it upside down is because the metal is so heavy, the steel here, that it will come loose from the tape, and that's why I prefer to suspend it vertically into the solution. I'm just stirring my solution to make sure everything's dissolved before I add my steel. Now I'm going to drop it down inside and make sure it's securely taped over the edge of my container. Be sure to set a timer or stopwatch so you know how long your piece has been in the solution. We're going to come back and check it in about 30 minutes. Now I'll come back in about 30 minutes and check the solution, and it will get a really beautiful copper cover over the steel, and you can simply just have a little brush. You can use a toothbrush, or you can use a soft bristle paintbrush and just brush off the copper and put it back in. I left mine in for a total of 60 minutes. So after 30 minutes I check it, I brush away the copper, and then I put it back in for another 30 minutes, and then it was done. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You'll also notice that the water is very blue in the beginning, and as the solution starts to interact with the steel and starts to begin the etching process, it turns dark green. Okay. See you in 30 minutes. So it's been 30 minutes and I pulled my piece out of the solution. You can see this beautiful copper starting to form on the surface. I simply just take a toothbrush or a soft bristle brush and I brush it down onto a piece of paper and just remove it. Just make sure you're using a soft brush because you don't want to rip off your resist. After I get all of that removed, I simply put it back into the solution and let it sit for an additional 30 minutes. Okay, so I just got both of my plates out of the bath and cleaned off all of the tape and everything. And I just wanted you to see how absolutely gorgeous they are. And the etch is absolutely insane. I don't know if you can see how deep it is, but it is really, really deep. Probably one of the deepest etches I've ever gotten. So it looks just absolutely beautiful. And this is the way to go. Trying to get a good photo for you there. Nice and deep. This one's nice and deep too. Ooh, I'm blinded by the sun there. Okay. Okay, so if you're considering getting a wonderful Durston rolling mill, I suggest you contact my friends at ottofrei.com and they'll help you choose the perfect one for you. This gave you a lot of great ideas of all the fun things that you can do with your rolling mill. A great addition to your studio, and the Agile line that Durston has come out with has made it affordable for every jeweler to own one. So thanks for watching. You can post questions and comments below and I'll do my best to answer if you have any. And please check me out at lesliekalevillarreal.com. And I have a lot of online classes and some free videos and a lot of free tutorials on there too. Okay, thanks for watching. Peace out to keep making pretty things.